Anyone hear me out there?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
My pleasure, Hank, anytime.
Thank you.
Kathy Vosberg. Okay.
Michelle Nizo. Thank you.
Josh Sonnenberg.
Hey, can you hear me at least? All right. Thank you.
Sound okay, Dan? Very good. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you. Let me get the other one off. I don't think it's working either one day. I'm gonna check. get rid of the other one? Okay. Yep. I'll join you.
Call to order the regular board meeting of January 26th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, or recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag
of the United
of the
States
United
of
States
America
of America,
and to the
and to
republic
the republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for all. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Here from Chesterfield Township, Michigan, the municipal complex.
Treasurer Elliott.
Here from Chesterfield Township in my office at the municipal complex.
Trustee Anderson.
Here from my dwelling in Chesterfield Township, Michigan.
Trustee Joseph.
I'm present from my home in Chesterfield.
Trustee Demink.
Present from my home in Chesterfield.
Trustee Vosberg.
Present from my home office in Chesterfield.
And Clerk Barry is here from my home studio in Chesterfield.
All members are present. Item 5, presentations. No formal presentations under this item tonight. Item 6 is department reports. And I'm going to begin with a report from Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Supervisor. So part of the township treasurer's responsibility is to update the board on investments. In the past, the board has received a quarterly report email with an Excel spreadsheet attached. And this is what is required. Today, I would like to add an additional presentation of that information in a format that allows the public to view the information as well in an effort to be more transparent. And the second slide, please. Thank you. So this is a summary of our checking and savings accounts. We manage several funds. The largest account is sewer and water, and the second largest is public safety. I have highlighted the interest rates so that you can see the banks are currently paying little to no interest on these accounts. As you look at the balances, take note that cash receipting, accounts payable, and the payroll account are to be paid out to other funds and outside vendors. Also, the funds in the tax account are owed to schools, the county, library, general fund, and public safety. Next slide, please. Here we have an overview of our investments in various CDs and in Huntington Securities. I am currently working with our financial institutions to assess the investment portfolio to ensure diversity in dates of maturity, investment type, and banking relationships. Unfortunately, the current market has created a very low interest rate environment. As I continue to discuss these accounts, I will refer to percentages also as basis points. So 1% in the financial world is also known as 100 basis points. The term basis points is used to express differences in parts per 10,000. This makes it easier to discuss rates that are less than 1%. You will see on the current slide, our average rates range from 0.01% to 1.50%, or from 1 to 150 basis points. Prior to my arrival, several CDs were locked in and are now coming due. We had 3 12-month CDs mature in December. Those CDs had rates ranging from 1.2% to 1.45%, or 120 to 145 basis points. I do apologize. I know these are a lot of numbers, so stick with me. We had 6 CDs mature in January. 2 of them were 12-month CDs that were locked in at 1.2% and 1.45% respectively, or 120 or 145 basis points. 2 were 6-month CDs that were locked in July of 2020 at 0.10% or 10 basis points. We had 1 3-month CD that was locked in at 0.01% or 1 basis point. And another was locked in last July at 0.05% or 5 basis points. The last of these CDs that came due was a 12-month CD that was locked in at 0.20% or 20 basis points. Please go to the next slide. So I wanted to give you a visual of, to help you understand what 0.01% looks like. So $100 at times 0.01% or is a penny. And 10 million invested at that same interest rate will earn you $1,000 in interest. And slide 5. So we looked back to 2011 to see the township's historical average interest rates and fund balances. We have seen very low interest rates before in 2014, 2015, and 2016. We did see this average rate increase in the last 3 years due to federal policy changes. However, by the end of year 2020, many of those CDs have matured and we have seen a steep decline in the available CD rates. Next slide, please. This is a chart to give you a visual of the steep decline historically of how we peaked out in 2019 and then it is now declining quite rapidly. So after conversations with our banking and investment partners, the Treasurer's Department did an analysis of what we anticipated is the effect of these developments will have on the 2021 budget. Sewer and water has the largest fund balance and public safety has the second largest. Although the projected interest income was decreased in the 2021 budget, the current offerings available to municipalities may show a steeper reduction than we previously thought. With that being said, the actual percentage that even sewer and water with the largest amount in their fund, it will only see a decline less than 0.5%. I am closely monitoring this situation. We'll continue to update the board regularly. Keep in mind that the state statute requires the treasurer to make prudent investments that will provide a reasonable return on investment and ensure funds will be available when needed without exposure to undue risk. And then in the next slide, I've invited the Managing Director of Institutional Investments of Huntington Securities to join us for an additional in-depth look at our accounts with them in the market environment. Thank you, Joff, for joining us tonight.
Hey, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks everyone for having me. I work in the institutional investment group at Huntington and have been working with Kathy and Ellen on the investment portfolio. And what I was hoping to do was go through a few economic slides just to dive a little further into what Kathy was reviewing there with the interest rate market. And just to give you a little bit of data as to what we're seeing and then what that data has driven the market to do from an investment standpoint. And then what I wanted to do was touch on the accounts that you have and then just give you a quick snapshot of what the actual options are out there so you can at least have an idea of, oh, okay, if we had funds to invest, this is what we'd be looking at from a market standpoint. Very eye-opening, certainly doesn't leave a lot of options on the table from an interest pickup standpoint. But it is the market that we're in right now. And so if nothing else, we think it'd be helpful to be aware of what we're seeing and how we're approaching it strategically. So if you want to flip to the first slide here, one past that. So what this is an economic forecast snapshot. And we really like this because it is hundreds of economists across the US at big banks, big insurance companies, at universities, and at their Federal Reserve. And they take a look at the data that's coming in and give their best estimate for where they think we're heading as an overall economy. And the nice thing about this is it gives you some history, so you can see the track record. You can see what happened last year in 2020 as a result of COVID, and then how the market expects us to rebound as we get into 2021 and hopefully into 2022 and continue momentum forward. But what I did is I circled a couple indicators on here, and the first one is real GDP, and then at the bottom is inflation, and specifically it's core PCE inflation, which is a broader indicator that the Federal Reserve tends to rely on. Our CPI right above that is Consumer Price Index. That's just more focused on what consumers are buying. Core PCE is a little broader, so it takes into consideration what manufacturing input costs are and things like that. But the reason I highlighted those is because GDP and inflation tend to be the two things that the Federal Reserve talks about more than anything else. Certainly employment is a factor in that, but really they're looking at a stable growth rate in GDP of ideally around 3%. And then for inflation, they're targeting 2%. As you can see from GDP in 2020, we came in at negative 3.5%. They expect us to rebound to fully recoup that in 2021 and then get back into a more positive growth trajectory as we get into the second half of 2021 and then into 2022. But a nice pickup in speed there. I mean, anything above 3% is a healthy economy. And so that's what we're seeing right now. Obviously, it's easy to do that when you're coming off of a year like 2020. But gives you an idea, not substantial growth. We're not seeing 5% plus, but 4% is a good number. And then carrying over a 3.5% in 2022 is something that has the market excited. If we look at inflation, however, we don't see that getting above 2% through at least 2022. And so when you look at inflation indicators, and those are going to be all over the place because you do have a wide variety of opinions right now on what this excessive stimulus, maybe I shouldn't say excessive, but aggressive stimulus from the Federal Reserve and from Congress. The idea is that flooding the system with that much cash could potentially drive inflation sooner than people are expecting. But there's also a lot of people on the other side of the table that think that there are other factors at play that are going to continue to drag on inflation. And so when we factor those two opinions together, we ultimately get where they think we're going to get around 2% towards the end of 2022. One silver lining in there, I think, is the housing market. As everybody knows, in Michigan, it's doing well right now. Interest rates are near record lows. And overall, the consumer feels confident enough that they are, looking at potential opportunities. And there's some mobility, more mobility that I think we were anticipating in terms of people moving. And then a lot of the activity has been refi. But certainly a really healthy segment of the economy with housing right now. But these are numbers that we find interesting. We can drill down on any of these, but overall, we think it paints a picture of where we're heading here over the next couple years. So if we flip to the next slide, then what we're looking at is, as a result of that data and what the Federal Reserve is telling us and what Washington has done from a stimulus standpoint, what we've seen is significant movement in the Treasury market. And so what I did is I put two dates on here. And so the solid green line that gets a little bit higher as we go to the right side of the chart, that's going to be where we are today from a Treasury standpoint. And what we're looking at is at the bottom, if you follow that 1M, we're looking at 1 month all the way out to 30 years. And so when we're looking at this chart, it's just typically referred to as the yield curve. And it's a nice snapshot to say, okay, yields on the short end are much lower than yields on the long end, or yields on the short end are the same as yields on the long end, or at times we get an inverted curve like we did going into COVID. But taking a look at the yield curve gives us a pretty good idea of the sentiment of the overall investors and where they're putting their funds. And so what we've seen since the election, which is that dotted line, we've seen short-term rates actually drop slightly, and then we've seen longer-term rates 5 years and out increase a little bit. And so basically what that tells us is, okay, the new administration, they believe that there's going to be additional stimulus that potentially is going to drive more inflation. And as a result, the longer end of the yield curve, which reacts to inflation expectations, that's what we saw sell off a little bit. And when the bond market sells off, yields rise. The opposite side of that, though, is as we've seen an increase in COVID over the last couple months and some, re-shutdowns of certain localities, what we're seeing is people say, okay, long term, we think we're going to get inflation probably late 2022, 2023, but we think the next year, where we were hoping that 2021 would see the end of COVID and we could all move on by July, we think it may take a little longer than that. And so people, as a result, have moved into the short term to say, we think we have another year or another 2 years of this. Let's go ahead, buy a 2-year treasury, ride this out, and by the time that we get to the end of 2022, we think that we'll be looking at an investment market where there's some better opportunities from a yield standpoint. So again, a little bit of movement from the election, a little shorter or a little lower on the short end and a little bit higher on the long end. So if we flip to the next slide, then what this is telling us is that's how the Treasury market has reacted to this. Well, part of that is as a result of what the Federal Reserve has been telling us. And so this chart right here is really helpful. It's a dot plot. And so what they do, there are 17 voting members at the Fed. And at the end of every meeting, they basically get to say, if I were running the show at the end of this year, here's where I would have the Fed fund rate, which is the overnight rate. It's what they charge banks to leave money at the Federal Reserve. And it's really a good indicator of where bank deposit rates are going to be is kind of how to think about the Fed fund rate. Short-term CDs, commercial paper, a lot of that stuff reacts to where the the Fed fund rate is. So again, we have 17 voting members. You can see here in 2020, they all were comfortable at 0. In 2021, they're all comfortable at 0. 2022, they're all comfortable at 0, except for one person who says, I think by the end of 2022, we're going to need to raise rates one time. And then when we get to 2023, we see a few more voting members peel off. And so by the time we get to the end of 2023, we have 5 members that say, I think by the end of that year, we're going to be in a position where we can raise rates. So the way to look at that again is inflation could pick up a little quicker than expected, but ultimately the 17 voting members at the Fed are telling us we don't think that we're going to do anything with short-term rates until probably 2023. So does the market believe them? If you flip to the next slide, this is a futures chart of large investors buying futures contracts on when the Federal Reserve is going to raise rates. And so we look at what the Fed says, and then we look at this to say, what do investors think? And we like this because this is where they're actually investing. So this is where they're putting their money. It's not when they're on NBC talking, it's where they're actually investing. And the way to read this is their meeting dates are on the left-hand column. So that's when the Federal Reserve would meet and potentially adjust their short-term rates. And then that next column is the number of hikes or cuts. And if we're seeing a negative, that means that the market is positioned for a rate cut as opposed to a rate hike. The catch, though, is those numbers, if we translate them to percentages, the highest percent we're seeing is that July 28th meeting, and that's 0.11 or 11% of the market thinks that the Fed will cut rates another 25 basis points in July because COVID is going to cause the economy to slow more than expected. That would be the idea behind that, but that's only 11% of the market. 89% in July thinks the Fed sits on their hands. And if we pull it all the way down to January of 2022, 1 year from now, it falls back to 9%. So really the way to think about that is 9 out of every 10 investors believe the Fed is just going to keep rates steady. 1 out of every 10 thinks the Fed may actually cut rates again. So what do we take from that is that the market right now is fully positioned, that we don't expect anything to change from a short-term investment standpoint, at least for probably the next 18 months. Even if we start to see a really strong recovery the second half of this year, the Fed's been very clear that they're going to continue to sit on their hands, let plenty of confidence build, let plenty of momentum build before they would even hint at cutting rates. So as a result of that, that's the data that we're seeing. That's the market sentiment. And then what we do is we take that information, that we've had those conversations then with Kathy recently about, as a result of this, how should we position things going forward? And if you want to flip to the next slide, what this is a basic account review. And as you can see here, what we've done, and I'll walk you through some of these, but what we've done is implemented a barbell strategy where, because there's a little uncertainty in that kind of 2 to 4 year range, anytime in that 2 to 4 year range, the Fed could potentially look to raise rates. It all depends on how quickly the economy recovers. But to play against that, a lot of times what you'll do is look in that 3 to 5 year range, put a portion of your funds there and just lock it in so that you can get the highest coupon or the highest yield that the market's offering. And then with the rest of it, you keep it fairly short, and you'll look 9 months and in with commercial paper or short-term CDs, or just leaving it in cash if a bank is paying you an attractive rate. So that's what we've done right now. And if you take a look at the two largest accounts there, public safety and sewer and water, those right now are a combination of CDs and then commercial paper. And so we have callable CDs though, and that's one thing that we moved into as opposed to your standard CDs. And the reason being was, if rates wind up staying low 6 months from now or a year from now, when these banks have a chance to call that in, they'll likely call it in and refinance again at the same rate. We don't think rates are going any lower than they are right now, but they certainly could hold steady at current levels. And so as a result of that, we've looked at it and said it's going to be a really tough market to time. So let's just split it in the middle here, and we'll put some long-term into CDs. And if they get called in, we'll reconsider at that point. Do we reinvest longer term? Do we roll those called in funds? Do we just roll them short-term and keep them in a 9-month and in window? So that strategically, those are the things that we're looking at and thinking about in terms of where to allocate the assets right now. But it is a tricky market. It doesn't leave a lot of attractive options. But from what we're given and what we're reading from the expectations of the market going forward, we do think that this is an attractive portfolio, all things considered. A 44 basis point yield is not bad right now, when most things that we see are 15 basis points and lower. So if you wanted to drill into any of those, we certainly could, but I really just want to give you a snapshot of some of the banks that you're invested in, what some of those maturities look like, and then what the overall yield is producing from this portfolio. And then the last 3 slides are snapshots of what the market looks like. So this is what was available this week. And just to the point of, the options are fairly limited right now. And you can see here on this slide, these are CDs. And so from 1 year out to 5 years, you can see that range of 5 basis points to about 50 basis points, depending on how far you go. If you flip to the next slide, we take a look at treasuries and government agency bonds. And the same thing, if we're looking at 1 year, a US Treasury is 7 basis points or 0.07. As we go out a little bit longer, we start to get into the 30, 40, 50. But again, to get that 58 basis points, that last one there, that's a 5-year maturity. So that's what we're looking at. And then the very last slide here is commercial paper. And we think there's a lot of value with commercial paper right now, and just allowing you the opportunity to ride out this low rate environment. And so we're looking, as you can see, about 15 to 25 basis points. These are all investment grade, all carry strong balance sheets, and are also operating in a really accommodative market due to the Federal Reserve and what they're doing with funding right now. So I do think it's a very comfortable environment for corporations. These are all investment grade, and they have nice balance sheets. So, to get 15 to 25 basis points 9 months in, it's certainly something to consider. And we've done some of that recently in these accounts. But I do appreciate the time. Would be glad to provide any additional information or answer any questions, but really wanted to give a high-level overview of what we're seeing, where we think we're going, and as a result of that, within the market, how we position the portfolio.
Thank you, Treasurer Elliott. Oh, hold on, let me unmute myself.
Are
Thank you,
there
thank you,
any,
Treasurer Elliott. Are there
any questions?
Yep, go ahead. Thank you, Treasurer
for-
Elliott.
Shaw?
Thank you very much. Are there any further department reports? I know Trustee Joseph does have one.
Thanks. Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate the time.
You're
I
welcome.
got one too, Dan.
Thank you, Kathy. Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'll be brief. The department reports, we normally, Trustee Anderson and I will report back on anything significant that's going on in the police and fire. We have our administrators have been very preoccupied the last few weeks and probably the next two with the accreditation and all of the things going on over there. So we've opted to not have a January meeting. We will update the board in February with some fairly significant things. As it relates to the library board, the last meeting was on January 20th, and many interesting things coming out there. The library board is looking to put together their purchasing for materials that they allow out, check out. In the past, the library has spent significant monies on DVDs and CDs and things that they are questioning whether or not is relevant at this stage. They're looking at really every nickel they have coming in a very conscientious way. One of the things that I was encouraged by was the reopening of some limited hours. The report from Ms. Madsen, our librarian, is that the computer access seems to be the most sought after service that the library provides. In particular, the interest in trying to secure a COVID vaccination. So getting into the library and being able to access the computer system in order to log into the county website in order to schedule an appointment for a vaccination is something that there's been a lot of interest and a lot of clamoring in. The library would like residents to know that Wi-Fi hotspots can be checked out. They can be loaned out, as can some laptop. There aren't a ton of laptops available, but they are part of the portfolio there at the library. So again, the hope is the library is partnering with really any senior group, and something that I thought might be of value, and Mr. Supervisor, perhaps we could pass it on, or Trustee Demink, to the leisure services, is a number of seniors are contacting the library with requests for assistance in how to navigate the county's COVID website, the health department website. And I actually got a call today from Treasurer LaFontaine, who indicated that he and his wife were trying to get vaccinations today, and it's a difficult process to navigate. And as a senior, he said he's fairly savvy there, but he wondered about our township seniors and maybe something that our leisure services might be able to assist some of our seniors with. The county is doing everything they can. Of course, the state is. Our library stands ready to assist with equipment and the ability to actually log on, but perhaps something that our leisure services might want to take a look at and assist seniors with navigating that. It's fairly difficult and frustrating. I think every update from Executive Hackle is to be patient and recognize that there are a very limited number of vaccines and a lot of individuals clamoring to get one. So our seniors aren't typically the most computer savvy, and so some help there might be warranted. Again, the library is open from 10 to 5, and they do check out Wi-Fi hotspots and laptops. So thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Trustee Demink.
Thank you. Trustee Joseph, I'll pass that on to Amanda when I talk to her regarding that. I definitely know it's been a problem trying to get through that county website last week. 185 phone calls for me and 25 minutes on the computer and never got through. Luckily, I'm going to be able to get a shot through my department, so I'm going tomorrow. But I will pass that on, David, to
Thank
Amanda.
you, sir. Thank you.
All right, a few things that I do have from Leisure Services. The latest publication of Chesterfield Connection is also available for viewing at parks.chesterfield.org for all things recreation. Skip to page 8. All activities require pre-registration. Learn with a Master Gardener on Friday, January 29th from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. Seniors are invited to a 45-minute presentation on gardening tips, including soil, water, and plant choice and pruning. Master Gardener Jean Persley will be sharing her experience, love of nature, passion for gardening, and answer your question. Advanced registration is required for this cost-free program. 949-0400 extension 4. Seeing our senior smiles is something we aspire to do. Help us help them beat the wintertime blues. We are challenging all kids to write a letter or draw a picture to brighten their day. Now through March 31st, Chesterfield Leisure Services is accepting your letters for delivery to a lucky senior recipient. Practice your penmanship, drawing skills, and grammar while filling someone else's bucket list with joy. Next, dance lessons. Drop Everything and Dance is ready to move and shake with your children ages 2 to 6. Classes begin the week of February 15th. Registration accepted at Leisure Services, 949-0400 extension 4, or online. Cost is $50 for a resident, $55 for non-resident for 6 weeks. Next, spring baseball season will be here before we know it. Registration is available. First come, first serve through March 5th. Space is limited. Don't delay. Register today. Select leagues are available for kids ages 5 to 15 as of 8/31 of 21. T-ball, pitching machine, minors, majors, and senior ball is available. And last, is there a better way to stay engaged and active during the winter? Bowling returns February. Start the year with connecting one another in an activity you will love when you join us for bowling at the Premier Lanes. Participants bowl 2 games and shoe rental is included. At registration, choose from bumper or traditional bowling in the following settings: adult and child, youth ages 4 to 12, and adaptive child or adult. Registration is accepted online or by calling the township. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you, Trustee Demenk. Any further board reports or
Mr. Supervisor?
Trustee Anderson?
Thank you. Yeah, the Chesterfield Township Historical Society will be having its first meeting of the year this coming Monday, February 1st at 6:30. Will be not at any of the historical facilities, but it'll be using your electronic equipment. I'd advise all members to check for the emails. It'll be a WebEx meeting. Thank you much.
Thank you. Any further department reports? Seeing no further department reports, we're going to move on to the consent agenda, item number 7. Clerk Berry.
Item 7 is the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. 7A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of January 12th, 2021. B, approval of the agenda with addendum if necessary. C, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. Item D, approve a recommendation to reimburse FF Andrew Soames for his education tuition, which is firefighter Andrew Soames, for his education tuition in the amount of $5,625 from GL number 205-336-864.
Do I have a motion? And before we, there is a chance that we are going to have an action item coming out of closed session. So in prior meetings, we have moved public comment and board comment to after closed session. I wanted you to keep that in mind before we made a motion. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve as stated.
Motion by Clerk Berry.
Support, Elliott.
Support by Trustee Elliott.
Treasurer.
Oh, I'm sorry, Treasurer Elliott. Discussion. We had a motion by Clerk Barry, support by Treasurer Elliott to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
I'm sorry, Mr. Supervisor, I'm sorry for the delay, but in terms of the agenda, I would ask the motion maker to allow the public comments to follow the closed session in order to provide any explanation that board members might feel are appropriate coming out of the closed session and a potential action item.
Mr. Supervisor, I will amend my motion to place public comments after the closed session
Thank you, Clerk Barry.
and board comments.
Is there continued support? And that's both public comments and board comments. Bear with me because I'm going to rearrange our slide.
Yes,
Yep.
continued support.
Continued
Yes.
support. We have a motion by Clerk Barry, support by Treasurer Elliott to approve the consent agenda with an amendment to item 7B to remove public comment and board comment to after closed session. Any further comments from the board? Clerk Barry, has there been any public comments submitted on the consent agenda?
There have been no public comments submitted on the consent agenda.
Motion by Clerk Barry, support by Treasurer Elliott to approve the consent agenda with addendum, or with, as amended. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Clerk Barry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 8 is the public hearing. Clerk Barry.
Item 8A is a public hearing to hear comments on the allocation of the 2021 Community Development Block Grant Funds.
Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion,
Motion, was that
Second.
motion by Trustee Vosberg,
Vosberg.
support by Treasurer Elliott? Is that correct?
I support it as well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure who I heard first.
Motion by Trustee Vosberg, support by Clerk Barry. Clerk Barry, please call the roll to open the public hearing.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. The public hearing is open at 7:37 PM. There were some public comments submitted, I believe, Clerk Barry.
Yes, there are, Mr. Supervisor.
In years past, the action item on the allocation of the Community Development Block Fund grants will be done at the next meeting. This is just the required public hearing part of that. I miss all of the great service organizations being able to present to us. However, multiple folks did submit comments via the portal. Clerk Barry.
The first item, Mr. Supervisor, on this slide that you've presented currently is from Dory Vasquez Nolan, and she is from Care House. Good evening. My name is Dory Vasquez Nolan, and I am the Executive Director of Care House, the Macomb County Child Advocacy Center. Our main office is located in Mount Clemens, and we also have a satellite office located in Warren. Care House is the only agency in Macomb County providing a comprehensive intervention, advocacy, and treatment response for child victims of sexual abuse, physical abuse, or children who have witnessed a violent act, as well as their non-offending family members. Our goal is to minimize trauma for child victims of abuse and to support the child victim and family through the investigation and prosecution phases and provide support to begin the healing process. Care House is one of over 800 accredited child advocacy centers, or CACs, in the United States. We collaborate with all law enforcement jurisdictions in Macomb County, as well as the FBI, Homeland Security, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, Children's Protective Services, the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office, and medical and mental health professionals. We know that talking about child sexual abuse is difficult. Unfortunately, that is a big part of the problem. We cannot wish away child sexual abuse or pretend that it does not exist. The reality is that at least 1 in 10 children will become victims of sexual abuse before they turn 18. Almost 3 kids in every Michigan classroom and over 20,000 of all the children right here in Macomb County today are living with the trauma of sexual abuse. These numbers are surely much higher than our best estimates because most children never tell. Sadly, living with sexual abuse is a reality for children of every race, gender, and economic status. These children could be your kids, your neighbors' kids, or your kids' friends, or may have even been you or me. Many of the parents who come to Care House with their children disclose that they were also abused as children and never received any help in dealing with their trauma. Many of them never told. The abuse of their children often triggers their trauma all over again. Care House works with all non-offending family members as a whole to promote healing. After the forensic interview, Care House also offers follow-up support services for child victims and their families, intervening to promote healing and helping them to cope with all of the emotions that come with the disclosure of abuse, including guilt, disbelief, fear, and anger. These services include crisis counseling, child safety assessments, parent and child support groups, trauma-focused therapy sessions, family advocacy, access to forensic medical examinations, a family pantry with cleaning supplies, baby items, PPEs, school supplies, games, books, holiday assistance for our families in need, referrals to other needed community services. As the designated counsel in Macomb County for the Michigan Children's Trust Fund, Care House also offers child abuse prevention information, education, and training for professionals and to the community at large. Families are never charged for the services they receive at Care House. I am also proud to report that according to our most recent independent financial audit, over 88 cents of every dollar that comes to Care House is specifically devoted to serving children and families in our community. Chesterfield Township statistics. Since our opening in 1996, we have conducted over 8,500 child forensic interviews, with 423 of those children residing in Chesterfield Township. In 2018, we provided 753 forensic interviews. 27 of those children reside in Chesterfield Township. In 2019, we provided 757 forensic interviews. 33 of those children reside in Chesterfield Township. In 2020, we provided 664 forensic interviews. 32 of those children reside in Chesterfield Township. We received $8,400 in CDBG funding from Chesterfield Township for this past year, which is helping support services to 14 families. 2020 has definitely been a very challenging year for Care House and the families we serve. Our services were determined to be essential by the state of Michigan, and our staff has continued to serve children and families even during the stay-at-home orders. Unfortunately, 2 of our annual fundraising events were canceled this year, so our resources have been stretched thin. We have already seen a greater demand for support and services from families impacted by the pandemic. And we also have experienced an increase in unexpected expenses as we implement policies and practices to protect our staff and their families we serve. We depend on support from the community to provide a voice for child victims and a safe place for them to be heard. And we are for the longstanding and generous support from Chesterfield Township. We respectfully request your consideration for funding this upcoming year in the amount of $9,000, which will support services for 15 child victims and their families that reside in Chesterfield Township. Of course, we would be grateful for any amount you are able to allocate to us. For more information about Care House, we invite you to visit our website at www.mccarehouse.org and to follow us on Facebook. Thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you to Care House. The next one that we received beforehand was Wigs for Kids.
Public comment submitted on this item is from Maggie Varney. Maggie's Wigs for Kids of Michigan would like to thank the Chesterfield Township Board of Trustees for their previous support of our programs and sharing information about our program with the community this evening. Founded in 2003 by Maggie Varney, a licensed cosmetologist, Maggie's Wigs for Kids of Michigan is a local grassroots 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides wigs and support services to children ages 3 to 18 with no charge throughout the state of Michigan. In June 2020, we opened a new wellness center where we have expanded our programming to include nutrition and fitness, skin and nail care, massage therapy, an enchanted tea room, social gathering space, and more. There is no facility like this anywhere in the world where a child may receive these services and heal from the emotional, social, and psychological side effects of hair loss. When the COVID-19 pandemic struck, we pivoted our essential programming, conducting wig consultations through Zoom right from the children's hospital beds with the assistance of nurse navigators and the child life specialists. We are also hosting our support services classes and activities via Zoom so the children can still see their peers who have faced similar health challenges and heal together. We respectfully request $1,000 to provide a wig and support services to another child and their family during the 2021-2022 grant. Cancer and other health challenges don't stop in the face of COVID-19, and neither do we. We recently helped a child named Kayla from the Chesterfield Township area, and fortunately her family was over income, so we did not have to tap into the funds you have allocated to our program for the current cycle. We are grateful for any amount awarded to our organization, and if you ever know of a child in need of our services, please refer them to us. We help everyone, charge nothing, and turn no one away. We can be reached at 586-772-6656 or visit us online at www.wigs4kids.org. That completes that public comment, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. The next one that was pre-submitted was Turning Point.
This item was submitted via email. Good evening. I am Heather, children's therapist at Turning Point. I am here as a representative for our shelter program tonight to request $5,000 in community block grant money from Chesterfield to assist in the provision of shelter services for survivors and their families of domestic and sexual violence from Chesterfield. Turning Point has been part of the community for over 40 years. We are a domestic sexual violence support organization inside of Macomb County. Turning Point Shelter provides emergency shelter to Chesterfield residents fleeing violence in their homes. In fiscal year 2020, Turning Point provided 212 shelter bed nights to one Chesterfield survivor, including one child. During those bed nights, it cost Turning Point approximately $6,360. We provided shelter, basic needs. Some examples are clothing, diapers, formula, and toiletries, meals, crisis intervention, case management, children's supportive services and advocacy, program advocacy, and support groups. In addition to shelter, Turning Point provided the following services to Chesterfield residents. 65 individuals received help with PPO filing. 21 people received counseling and advocacy services. 2 people received legal advocacy assistance. 5 Chesterfield survivors received forensic nurse exams following sexual assault. 5 Chesterfield survivors received crisis intervention, information, and referral from our first response team following an assault. 38 Chesterfield callers received assistance through Turning Point's 24-hour hotline. Even during COVID, we are offering a comprehensive array of services. All of our services are free. 24/7, 365 hotline, emergency shelter, home-based community housing advocacy for residents leaving the shelter, individual and group counseling, assistance with filing personal protection orders, forensic nurse exams to survivors of sexual assault, legal advocacy and personal protection orders, prevention education. Turning Point has a secondhand rose store to assist survivors with basic needs free of cost. Instead of asking for funding support, I would rather be here to inform you that there is no longer violence within the homes of residents in Chesterfield, Macomb County. Unfortunately, Turning Point's 24-hour crisis line and the fact that our shelter is full most of the time demonstrates daily that family violence continues, contributes to homelessness, and that our services are greatly needed. Turning Point's commitment to ending domestic and sexual violence cannot happen without the support of our community. Please help us to maintain this crucial and viable service by supporting the continuation of grant funding support. If awarded the $5,000 requested of Chesterfield, Turning Point will be able to provide approximately 165 nights of shelter to those who identify themselves as Chesterfield residents. Thank you for the opportunity to address this council and for your consideration in providing part of the solution for a community response to domestic and sexual violence.
Thank you. Excuse me. Any further public comments on the item 8A?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, we have received one additional comment.
The interfaith caregivers?
Yes, sir.
Please read it into the record. And there might have been another one as well from a resident comment.
Okay. This is from Scott Andrews at Interfaith Volunteer Caregivers.
Okay.
Good evening, trustees. The CDBG Safe at Home project of the Interfaith Volunteer Caregivers is part of IVC's larger chore and repair program for older and disabled adults that is provided for free. The project was developed to provide additional chore and repair services in communities that allocate funding for this purpose. We are grateful to partner with your township and have a formal request for CDBG funds to allow us to grow these services each year and to begin to reach additional struggling individuals. Through the Safe at Home project, Interfaith Volunteer Caregivers assists low to moderate income seniors and physically challenged adults with indoor and outdoor chores, minor home repairs, and routine housekeeping maintenance tasks completed by volunteers for free who want to assist our vulnerable senior community. IVC identifies individuals who cannot take care of those needs on their own and who have limited family or financial resources available. By providing these services, older and disabled adults are better able to remain safe and independent at home. Properties that could easily fall into disrepair are maintained better and communities are strengthened. CDBG funding is directed only to those individuals who meet the Safe at Home guidelines. Such guidelines include, but are not limited to, client receiving services must reside in a participating community. Client receiving services must submit documentation showing that they are low to moderate income, according to federal poverty standards. Clients receiving services must have a signed affidavit on file that predates the service provided. The IVC CDBG Safe at Home program meets the HUD national objective in providing benefits and services to low and moderate income individuals and households. In addition to the national objective of serving low to moderate income individuals, the project does have a secondary effect of helping to prevent blight by focusing on the repair, maintenance, and upkeep of individual homes and properties in the community. Participants are eligible for Safe at Home services if they are at least 60 years of age or have a disability, cannot perform the activities themselves, do not have friends or family available to perform the services, and do not have adequate resources to pay for professional services. Our formal request to the Chesterfield Township Board of Trustees is for $592, which would allow us to provide at least 8 total chore repair requests for low-income senior residents of your township.
Thank you. Are there any further public comments for the public hearing?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, I have received one additional.
Please read it into the record.
This item is from Joe Kadich on Sutton Road. I propose that the township make administrating the COVID-19 vaccine to the township residents a priority by applying for block grant funds to implement the structure and manpower to do this. The organizational effort needs to start immediately and developed regardless of whether or not the funds are granted in the future. Macomb County Health Department has been giving COVID vaccinations to healthcare workers, first responders, critical workers, and just recently anyone over 65 years of age. Macomb's population of 850,000 includes approximately 100,000 over 65 years old, about 12% of the population. Macomb has only given about 5,500 vaccinations with 10,000 received due to supply problems. So just getting everyone over 65 vaccinated will take about 6 to 8 months. At this rate, it will be years getting the whole population vaccinated. Trying to call and register each Tuesday morning is impossible as the phone lines are overloaded and operators busy with reservations filling up less than 2 hours. This process does not allocate the vaccine fairly by percentage of population for each city or township within Macomb County is just random. Your duty to the residents of this township, and you need to prepare now to do this. We have about 50,000 residents that you need to be concerned about. Much of the staffing can be drawn from the current office staff. The medical people can be drawn from anyone in the fire or police department or MedStar with EMT and other training that involves sticking needles in arms. Plus, I'm sure that there are medical professionals that work part-time or volunteer. Organizing this would require a lot of work, and I'm sure that there are those in the community who would volunteer along with the board. Please, this community needs you to do this.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Moved.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Vosberg,
Support.
support by trustee Anderson to close the public hearing. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
The public hearing is closed at 7:57 PM. Item number 9 is the regular agenda, 9A.
Mr. Supervisor, in years past, you've afforded board comment on the presenters, and I was wondering if you might be inclined to do so tonight.
That was, in years past, we've actually done an action item. I don't mind if you want to do it now, but this will be back in front of us at the next board meeting. So if you would like to make a comment, feel free to.
If you don't mind, I think what comes back to us in the next board meeting will just be a recommendation with amounts. And I would just like to make a brief comment, if I may.
I am comfortable with that if the board is comfortable.
Thank you. The presenters, I would like to just say thank you to the presenters that took the time to send in a request. And I'm very familiar with all four, but in particular, I wanted to point to the board to again, they're invaluable to our community, specifically Care House and our Wigs for Kids organization. Those two presenters that wrote in tonight are two of the most beautiful people I think I've ever met in my life. Ms. Varney with Wigs for Kids and Dory over at Care House has been there forever. And I would just like to remind the board, as I have in years past, the staff at Care House are some of the most compassionate and highly trained people I've ever worked with. I think Trustee Demink and I share some experience with this organization. Many, many years ago, when a child would disclose possible sexual abuse, the protocol was to have that individual, and typically they would disclose at school. So you have a social worker or a teacher that the child reports to, and then the teacher might take the child down to the counseling office, and then the kid discloses again to the counselor and maybe the principal, and then a protective service complaint, and then a law enforcement complaint. And the long story shorter is that these children have often described the retelling of their abuse as more traumatic than the actual abuse. When Care House came into play, it provided a place for all of the investigating partners, CPS, law enforcement, to interact with the interviewer, a highly trained forensic interviewer who was able to interact with the child and pull out the pertinent details in a highly trained way without the necessity of re-interviewing the child. I can tell you that from my days in Children's Protective Services, going back a few decades now, this was an invaluable service. And as Dory pointed out in her presentation, it's not only the forensic interview that's provided to the child, but the comprehensive treatment that is also provided to the entire family. A sexual abuse allegation is quite devastating. And oftentimes the abuser is also the breadwinner. And so the mother of the child may be forced to make decisions in terms of protecting the child that compromise the financial and the housing. And all of these things factor into a situation that is quite ugly. And oftentimes kids will recant because they don't have the psychological and emotional support that Care House provides. I can't say strongly enough how much I believe their $9,000 request is very appropriate. And I think if we're just going to get territorial and look at the number of children from Chesterfield that have been served, I think our $9,000 is well accounted for. Additionally, the request for $1,000 from Ms. Varney is something that I think this board should approve. The Wigs for Kids organization has historically never turned a child away, whether we send 5 children from Chesterfield to Ms. Varney. She will take care of them all. And I think $1,000 is more than appropriate, and I wish we could do more. But I really appreciate, Mr. Supervisor, the opportunity to chime in on these 2 organizations, which I know very well, and their directors, who are, as I say, 2 of the most exceptional people I think I've ever met in my life. The $9,000 and $1,000 request is something we should approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further board comment? Thank you. Item 9 is the regular agenda, 9A. Oh, you're muted. Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
You're welcome.
Item 9A is a recommendation by Supervisor Acciavatti to reappoint Susan Dutcher to the Board of Review with a term ending December 31st, 2022.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved, Demink.
Motion by Clerk Barry, support by Trustee Demink. Discussion. Motion by Clerk Barry, support by Trustee Demink to approve item 9A as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Congratulations, Susan. Item 9B.
Item 9B
Oop.
is a recommendation by Supervisor Acciavatti to appoint Wendy Jones to the Board of Review with a term ending December 31st, 2022.
Do I have a motion? Trustee Anderson, was that you?
Correct.
Motion by Trustee Anderson.
Support.
Support
Trustee
by
Joseph.
Trustee Joseph. Discussion.
Mr. Supervisor, just a quick comment, if I may.
Trustee Joseph.
Very much appreciate Ms. Jones's commitment to our community. She's been instrumental in a number of areas, and I know you know Ms. Jones very well. She was very helpful in almost any community activity that we have, whether it be leisure services, Halloween events, or our tree lighting ceremony. She is always the first one in line to volunteer, and her service on the Board of Review has been impeccable. So I'm grateful to Ms. Jones and appreciate her volunteer efforts.
Any further?
Mr. Supervisor, the same. I'll totally concur with Trustee Joseph. Wendy's done a great job and has always volunteered. It's like a great asset. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments on the board on item 9B? Any public comments, Clerk Barry, on 9B, I guess, or 9A?
There have been no public comments submitted for items 9A or 9B.
Motion by Trustee Anderson, support by Trustee Joseph to approve item 9B as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
The motion passes. Welcome and congratulations again to Ms. Jones. Item 9C. Oh, I moved it for you.
Mr. Supervisor, I'm just looking at a public comment that was just submitted on item 9B. If I could read that into the record, please.
Please do.
This has been submitted by Wendy Jones. I would like to thank Supervisor Acciavatti and the board for my reappointment to the Board of Review. I am honored and pleased to be of service to this wonderful township for another 2 years. Thank you for your confidence in my commitment to this community.
Very timely. You are welcome. Thank you, Clerk Barry. Item 9C.
Item 9C is a recommendation by Supervisor Acciavatti to appoint Marc Reneau to the Board of Review with a term ending December 31st, 2022.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Clerk Barry.
Support.
Support by Trustee Vosberg. Unlike the former two reappointments with Ms. Dutcher and Ms. Jones, Mr. Reneau will be new to this committee, and he has been a very impressive individual on planning, and I think this is going to be a fantastic fit as a full-time member of the Board of Review. Any comments from the board?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd just like to add on to that, having worked with Mr. Reneau, and I know Trustee Domink has as well. He is a very, very knowledgeable guy. His role in commercial lending on a professional level brings invaluable asset to the Planning Commission, and I'm sure he'll bring the same to the Board of Review. Just a top-notch individual and another guy who really puts his heart into this community. So very, very happy to see Mr. Reneau in this position.
Any further comments from the board? Clerk Barry, has there been any public comments submitted?
There have been no comments submitted on this agenda item.
Motion by Clerk Barry, support by Trustee Vosberg to approve item 9C as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Domink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 9D.
Item 9D is a recommendation by Supervisor Acciavatti to appoint David Jacobson as alternate to the Board of Review with a term ending December 31st, 2022.
Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Motion by Trustee Vosberg. Is there support?
Second.
Support by Clerk Barry. An alternate is what Mr. Jacobson will be filling. I was equally impressed by his willingness to serve and knowledge in this area. There are 3 statutory members of the Board of Review. However, if for any reason one is unable to attend the required Board of Review sessions, Mr. Jacobson will be filling in. Has there been any public comments submitted on item 9D?
There have been no public comments submitted on this agenda item.
Motion by Trustee Vosberg, support by Clerk Barry to approve item 9D as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Domink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 9E.
Item 9E is to approve a recommendation by Public Works to purchase a Ford F-750 dump truck from LaFontaine Ford at a total cost of $128,944.24 from GL number 591-000-148000.
So moved.
Motion by
Domink.
Trustee Domink. Support by, is there support? Support by trustee Vosberg. Discussion, and I will blow up Director Coddington and Assistant Director Johnson if there are any questions.
Good evening, board members. This truck is budgeted and was planned for this year. This truck is replacing a truck that is over 20 years old, so it is well overdue. The other truck did its job well, but we do have to start replacing some of this fleet. The repairs on these older trucks are pretty expensive, and it was time. So I appreciate it. It was budgeted for it. It was budgeted for it. We had planned on it, so that's all I have. Thank you. I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions for Director Coddington? Clerk Barry, has there been any public comments submitted?
She's muted.
There have been no public comments submitted on this agenda item.
Seeing no public comments or no further discussion, we have a motion by trustee Demink, support by trustee Vosberg to approve item 9E as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll. Muted. Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Item 9F.
Item 9F is a recommendation by Facilities and Operations Department to extend janitorial services with Aztec's cleaning services at the municipal offices for 18 months, February 1st, 2021 to July 29th, 2022, for the total amount of $106,146 from GL number 101-265-931001.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by, was that Clerk Barry?
Yes.
Okay. Is there support?
Support.
Support by trustee Vosberg. Discussion. Trustee Joe. Oh, I'll go to Director Joseph or Director Sonnenberg first, and I'll put you in the queue, Trustee Joseph.
I appreciate it, sir. I just wanted to provide a quick breakdown for those people that are listening but don't have the agenda item in front of them. Obviously, the service at $106,000 seems like a lot of money, but when you break it down, the numbers are pretty simple. And obviously, in these times, it's one of the more important services inside our facilities. So just to give a real quick overview, the way this service breaks down is it's Monday through Friday, and it works out to be about 20 days a month, 260 days a year. If you take the holidays out, it's about $250. So the cost per day to do this service is about $283.06 roughly per day to clean our facility, which is a rather large facility, and we've raised the standards in these times to kind of keep up with the current protocols.
Questions for Director Sonnenberg? Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. I was looking through and I was wondering, I appreciate the breakdown. If you might elaborate on that, what that translates to in terms of man hours. So I know from presentations past, my takeaway was that this was really not a service that we could do at this level for this dollar amount in-house. What I mean by that is when we look at the hourly rate of our staff, and then you factor in all of the legacy costs associated with performing this service, this level of man hours would be significantly more if we were doing it ourselves, if we were doing it with a township designated employee. And I appreciate in the packet the way you broke it down, but just wondering conceptually if you have sort of man hours as to what this represents in a year.
Sure. I apologize. I don't exactly have the man hours, but I do appreciate your question because it is something that we spend a lot of time on. If you can remember, obviously, about 18 months ago, we asked for a 3-year contract. Then we went into a 1-year deal with a pretty significant review. where all parties kind of jumped in. We had a lot of back and forth with the board members, a lot of staff members. We did surveys. And then ultimately what we did is we changed the scope of work, and then we increased it to the current date today. And all we're looking for is to extend that. That's why we're only asking for 18 months, back to the original 3 years that we originally proposed, just to keep the timeline clean. But I do know for a fact, and I can provide detailed evidence, because before we did this, I was here for about a year and a half, and we really studied the time that went into this to get this even close to what we're doing today. And we just weren't as efficient as the professionals are, and the quality wasn't there. Not to say that our guys aren't good, but they're just not good at cleaning. So we put them, you know, at their dollar value, there's more important things they could be doing. So we moved them out in the field like we discussed earlier. I can gladly provide some of that backup information. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I will be happy to share that with you. But I can assure you, it was about double the current cost of where we're at.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was actually what I was looking for. Again, I think anytime the public hears about contractual services, the first question is, well, we have a lot of employees. Why wouldn't? And in this particular case, I think you have not just one individual, but, you know, Aztec Cleaning Services, you know, employs several people. And I've been in the township and, you know, evenings and see multiple people doing a variety of different tasks. The last question I have for you, as hopefully we start to see the light at the end of the tunnel with regard to COVID and the ability to have more, you know, activities in person, does Aztec offer, and are we utilizing them to provide for sort of heightened COVID level sanitizing services? So in particular, our leisure services and senior services, where we have people, you know, in the township offices, is that something that Aztec can provide, or is that an additional fee for that level of sanitizing?
So they are doing at the current rate that we require. They are at that rate. Now they do offer additional services, and they have come in for free and done some of those services when we've requested them. So it's kind of like a shared responsibility. They feel like it's beneficial to them. They're there, but you know, it's going to be a different world when everybody comes back, and we have to make some adjustments. But right now, we feel with the plan that we have in place, even if we were to move some programming back into the building, we feel like we're providing a safe place for people to do that.
Josh, what I was talking about in particular was, I don't know the technical term for it, but in essence, they are sort of like fogging machines, if you will, that they come in and you know, can sanitize an entire area. And I'm thinking particularly in our senior services, where we have, you know, a number of our, what arguably will be a very vulnerable population. And as we've heard earlier, you know, the vaccination could be months and maybe better part of 2021 before, you know, we're close. So is that something that Aztec provides, or will you be working with them, or do you have a different vendor in mind for specific COVID-related sanitizing?
So we have a little redundancy when it comes to that. And what I mean by that is a couple things. First, Home Depot came out, they mimicked a product that got real popular, so popular you couldn't buy it. It was an electrostatic sprayer that they mimicked off a really popular device, and they came out with it. As soon as it was available, they reached out to us, and we got our hands on 6 of them. So we have those units there, and it's a fine mist fogger. We actually have one at the senior center, we have one at the DPW, and we have one in the general building department. And actually it works so good that Aztec will use it for some of their cleaning services. Because typically what happened is they would use more like a bug sprayer, and the mist was so heavy, it would saturate all the you know, paperwork, anything on your desk. This is such a fine mist, and they've got such good reviews on it. That's kind of what we're using now. So we are prepared to help them when needed. We just don't want to put our employees at risk either.
No, that's excellent news, and I'm glad to hear we got our hands on those. Something the county's been using, and those electrostatic are very, very effective. So nice work getting our hands on some of those in the township. That's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further board comments? Clerk Barry, has there been any comments submitted via the web portal?
There have been no comments submitted on this agenda item.
Motion by Clerk Barry, support by Trustee Vosberg to approve item 9F as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Vosberg. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Oh, Director Sonnenberg, you're up again. Item 9G.
Item 9G is to approve a recommendation by Facilities and Operations Department to continue janitorial services with Aztec's cleaning services at the DPW Building for 18 months from February 1, 2021 through July 29, 2022, for the total amount of $46,800 from GL number 591-441-931-001.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Clerk Barry,
Support.
support by Trustee Joseph. Discussion on the DPW building.
So this obviously falls in the same family. What we're trying to do is align both contracts with one vendor. Since he's provided good service at the main office, we brought him over and we tested him for a couple months here at the DPW. And we adjusted his scope a little bit to get it to where it kind of fits our needs. And then this breaks down to about, let's going back to the number of days, about 250 days a year, which works out to be about $125 a day here is what this service would cost. So I know the initial number looks big, but when you break it down to a daily number, it's not that bad. So what our goal is here is obviously the DPW, we have a lot more moving parts, people going in and out of the building, a lot of mud being tracked around, and the guys have done a good job cleaning the building. It's just a lot of work. And instead of having them out in the field, we got them inside cleaning. So we want to leave it to the professionals moving forward. And that's why I have this request in front of you.
Discussion from the board or comments from the board or from the public. Clerk Barry, if any comments have been submitted.
There have been no public comments submitted on this agenda item.
Motion by Clerk Barry, support by Trustee Joseph to approve item 9G as submitted.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Bear with me for 1 second. Item number 9 is the addendum. There are no addendum. Item number 11 and 12 have been moved. So I am going to move them real quick. Item number 13 is closed session. Clerk Barry.
Item 13 is closed session. 13A, to discuss with legal counsel pending litigation in the matter of PI Tower Development LLC versus Charter Township of Chesterfield, United States District Court, Eastern District of Michigan, Southern Division, case number 420CV12280 MFL RSW, pursuant to MCL 15.268E. 13B, to consider the purchase of real property pursuant to MCL 15.268D, Section 8D of the Michigan Open Meetings Act.
Do I have a motion to enter closed session?
Motion to go into closed session.
Support. Joseph.
Motion by Trustee Demink, support by Trustee Joseph to enter closed session. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
We will be leaving this Zoom meeting and heading to another Zoom meeting, and we are in closed session at 8:23 p.m. Do I have a motion to re-enter open session?
Motion to go back in open session, Dominic.
Motion by trustee Demink,
Support.
support by trustee Anderson. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
We are back in closed or open session at 9:11 PM.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion coming out of closed session to formally present the 3 vacant parcels as discussed in closed session to PI Towers Council and continue negotiations towards a consent judgment.
Support.
Motion by trustee Joseph, support by, was that trustee Vosberg?
Elliott.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry, Elliott. Treasurer Elliott.
Treasurer Elliott. And make sure you listen to this closely, trustee Joseph, so I get it right. Formally present the 3 vacant parcels as discussed in closed session to PI Towers Council and continue negotiations towards a consent judgment.
Correct.
Discussion. Any comments submitted through the portal, Clerk Berry?
There have been no public comments submitted on this agenda item, or on this item.
Motion by trustee Joseph, support by treasurer Elliott to formally present the 3 vacant parcels as discussed in closed session to PI Towers Council and continue negotiations towards a consent judgment. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Elliott. Or excuse me, Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
No.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry. No.
Motion passes.
Mr. Supervisor, coming out of closed session, I'd like to make another motion specifically to authorize the supervisor to make an offer on behalf of the township to purchase the 3 vacant parcels at a purchase price not to exceed the average value of an appraisal performed by Siegel and Associates on behalf of the township and an appraisal performed by a company of the seller's choice at her option. The offer shall also include a minimum 60-day due diligence period with an option to terminate if the township does not decide to pursue the transaction.
Is there support?
Support, Elliott.
Motion by trustee Joseph, support by treasurer Elliott. Discussion. Clerk Berry, has there been any submittals via the online portal?
There have been no comments submitted on this agenda item, on this item.
Motion by trustee Joseph, support by treasurer Elliott, to authorize the supervisor to make an offer on behalf of the township to purchase the 3 vacant parcels at a purchase price not to exceed the average value of an appraisal performed by Siegel and Associates on behalf of the township and an appraisal performed by a company of the seller's choice at her option. The offer shall also include a minimum 60-day due diligence period with an option to terminate if the township does not decide to pursue the transaction. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry. No.
Motion passes. Item 11 is public comment. Clerk Barry, have there been any public comments submitted via the portal?
Yes, there have, Supervisor Acciavatti, and I would like to ask Deputy Treasurer Nyza Deputy Clerk Nyza to read those into the record.
Good evening. First comment is from Paul S. LaFada, Mailer Drive, Chesterfield Township, Michigan. Kwame Kilpatrick, recently pardoned, was convicted in federal court for racketeering and fraud, ordering to pay $1.5 million in restitution to the Detroit Water and Sewer Department. County Executive Mark Hackle, in a 2016 letter to the Macomb County Drain Commission, documented Anthony Morocco's $5 million in legal fee expenditures for each of the 11 municipalities involved in Morocco's lawsuit against Kwame Kilpatrick and Bobby Ferguson. $400,000 charged to Chesterfield Township in legal fees to recoup $25 million for fraudulent sewer repairs to the Macomb Drain Interceptor at that time, owned by the Detroit Water and Sewer Department, where Kilpatrick and Ferguson fraudulently benefited financially. Trustee Vosberg was Chesterfield's district representative and chair of the county's finance committee at that time. Why did Macomb County Drain Commissioner Anthony Morocco authorize a $45 million payment to the Water and Sewer Department without proper scrutiny? Morocco quoted in a 2011 Detroit Free Press article, "I was confident at the time all invoices for all repairs were valid." There were no checks and balances, no project invoice scrutiny. It probably took the Macomb County Drain Commission less than an hour to rubber stamp and process through finance the payment to DWSD. Even if Morocco won the lawsuit, it would have taken Kwame more than 6 lifetimes to repay his share of the fraudulent $25 million pie. The timing of Mark Hackle's 2016 letter to the Macomb County Drain Commissioner was politically motivated. Just prior to Morocco, who is currently under investigation for pay-to-play seeking re-election, Candace Miller, politician and Morocco's elected replacement as the Macomb County Drain Commissioner, conveniently passes blame to her predecessor, absolving herself and the Drain District of any financial responsibility for poor management. Drain Commissioner Miller currently holds $640,000 of Chesterfield's cash assets listed in the 2019 Plant and Moran audit for past bond overpayments, and recently holding another $875,000 Chesterfield's 7% share of the $12.5 million insurance claim. Just add another $400,000 plus the cost of money over the next 22 years as Chesterfield residents continue paying the full $70 million 15-mile sinkhole repair bond amount. Chesterfield also is invoiced over $1 million annually by the County Drain Commission for operations and maintenance. Chesterfield paid 7% of the $25 million in fraudulent charges, $1,750,000 to the Drain Commission, and $400,000 in Morocco's legal fee charges. That one big $2,150,000 toilet flush at the expense of Chesterfield residents. History tends to repeat. Why? Is this happening in Chesterfield? No checks and balances, no project invoice scrutiny. Questionable invoices brought to the Chesterfield board were approved after the repeated quote, "I am extremely confident," without documented invoice justification, marked as approved change orders to justify increased costs instead of holding contractual service vendors responsible for product deliverables. Let us recap there. Fraud, Kwame Kilpatrick and Bobby Ferguson. Failures, no checks and balances and questionable work product deliverables. Friends of Supervisor Acciavatti and Treasurer Elliott, Anthony Morocco and Candace Miller. Flushes, wasteful water expenditures that will continue to increase Chesterfield residents' sewage rates. My confidence level is always reflective of analysis analysis of facts and data. Paul S. LaFontaine, Chesterfield Township. And I
Any-
have a couple more, please.
Okay.
Comment from Nancy Orweiler on Jefferson Avenue, Chesterfield Township, Michigan. The agenda on the side here does not match what is going on at the meeting. Also can barely hear anything. I guess it is just too hard to speak at a level that can be heard. One can almost assume it is on purpose as it has been going on for a long time. SMH. And I have one more, please. Wendy Jones, Chesterfield Township, Michigan. I would like to thank Supervisor Acciavatti and the board for my reappointment to the Board of Review. I am honored and pleased to be of service to this wonderful township for another 2 years. Thank you for your confidence in my commitment to this community. Respectfully, Wendy Jones.
Any further
And
public?
that concludes.
No further public comment?
No further public comments, Mr. Supervisor.
We'll move on to board comment. Trustee Demink.
The only thing I have is going back to the community block grants, regards to Wigs for Kids and for Care House and Turning Point. Those are both good organizations. As Trustee Joseph stated, he and I have worked a lot with those in our other careers. So anything that the township does for any one of those, I would be in favor for. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you, sir. I'll probably continue, just ask our residents to remain safe, and also just had a couple questions. Is there anything on the horizon when you, Mr. Acciavatti, when you do your comments, anything on the horizon when we might get back in our building, or is that kind of tied up with the ongoing situations that we're faced with? Thank you, sir.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'd like to thank Treasurer LaFontaine for his comments. I was trying to follow along, and there was a lot of information in there, but I know that one thing from his 4 years on the board that he was very vigilant and very much respected for was his advocacy for the township. It sometimes put us in difficult situations with the county, specifically on issues involving Drain Commission and his work on really just advocating for the residents. Treasurer LaFontaine was tireless in that, and perhaps maybe not the most diplomatic individual when it comes to his advocacy. And certainly his comments tonight, he started off by talking about a pardon of Kwame Kilpatrick, and I had the same reaction that Trustee Vosberg, and it was not a full pardon. It was a commutation of his sentence, and so minor in the grand scheme of things. But I think what Treasurer LaFontaine was talking about is that when the county went back and sued the vendors who were responsible for the 15-mile sinkhole, there was a lot of talk of a record settlement, and that the county received a record settlement in the pursuit of holding those vendors accountable. Treasurer LaFontaine was very adamant that the settlement should have resulted in a return of 7% that the township was sort of staked in that lawsuit. And Paul was very disappointed that the 7% of the township's portion was not, in fact, returned to the township. And Treasurer LaFontaine had laid out a very nice argument for why that 7% with interest really was well over $1 million, and potentially could have paid down the bond that the township residents would be obligated to. And that didn't happen, and it hasn't happened. And the township 7% just kind of goes somewhere else in the Macomb Drain Intercept sort of plans. And so, again, there was a lot of information in his comments, but one thing that is resounding is his advocacy for the Chesterfield Township taxpayer. And while it's nice to, have great relationships with the county, and I certainly wouldn't want those compromised, to simply say, where is the Chesterfield taxpayer as it relates to some of these expenses, is an admirable quality. And I'm truly in awe of his willingness to make those demands, certainly not politically, not a politically advantageous exercise, but Treasurer LaFontaine was never concerned about that. He took his job very seriously, and so in his advocacy for the residents, simply saying what's in the best interest of those individuals was his chief charge, and I respect him a great deal for that. Ms. Orweiler, I'm sorry. I think as much as I've had disagreements with Supervisor Acciavatti in the past over a various number of issues, I can tell you that personally, he has done everything possible to make our meetings and keep our meetings in person, including taking on really an insurmountable odds of trying to conduct a township meeting with some of us appearing in the township boardroom and some remotely, and the mandates put on us by the governor really make it very, very difficult for us to be in person. I do believe that Supervisor Acciavatti would do, we would all be in person if it were in his control, and if it was a viable option, we would do it. It's just not possible, and it creates difficulties. So I'm sorry for the audio problems. Lastly, I would just like to thank the majority of the board who supported the action items coming out of our closed session. There's a lot of information that was conveyed to us in closed session, and the spirit of that is to try to protect the residents on Jefferson who would be unfortunately left with a very unsightly tower in their backyard. And really, we're doing everything within our power to put that tower in a place that accomplishes improved services for the residents as a whole, and also not to just devastate an individual who is in the shadow of that tower. And I don't take it lightly, and I'm grateful to the majority of the board who recognizes that even one resident who has to have a tower in their backyard is too many. And we're several doors down from a daycare center that would also have to have the tower looming over their business and the children in their care. So thank you to the majority of the board, and thank you to the legal team headed up by Ms. Anderson. She's been working on this for many years, and just the amount of effort and energy that's gone into trying to find a reasonable outcome for all parties involved is commendable. And thank you to Ms. Anderson, Mr. Siebert, and their team, as well as the additional attorneys that have joined our effort to bring about additional improved services while not compromising the quality of life for the residents along Jefferson. So thank you to everybody who was in support of the action items coming out of closed session. Thank you.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. I would like to start by thanking Treasurer Elliott for the report tonight. It was refreshing to hear where we're at, where we're going, and just an update on everything. I appreciate that. Sometimes we get emails with spreadsheets in them, and they don't get the same kind of attention that she gave to this issue. So thank you very much. And then also, I would like to congratulate the firefighter, Andrew Soames, for completing the paramedic program. I think that when our employees make those kind of achievements and reach those kind of milestones, it's a great service that improves our quality of life here in the township. So thank you very much for having the dedication for that. My last thing is I want to speak to the first public comment that was made at the conclusion of the meeting. And it was from someone who talks about facts. Well, he doesn't have the facts straight. As already stated, Kwame Kilpatrick did not get pardoned. His sentence was commuted. He's still guilty for what he did. And then there was a reference to me that I was the chair of some finance committee. I have never, as long as I've been an elected official on the township board or on the Board of Commissioners, been the chair of any finance committee. So I don't know what he's talking about. Thank you.
Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The Clerk's Department, I mentioned last meeting, would be putting together a calendar of passport late nights. That is the opportunity for those who cannot come into the office during regular business hours for a passport or for passport services to be able to participate in receiving that service after hours, after traditional office hours. And we do this several times a year as a service and an extended customer service to our residents. Although you do not have to be a resident in order to participate, anyone can come and receive passport services at the township offices. But it is very convenient for our residents who live so nearby that they can have all of their passport needs addressed in our office during regular business hours, but the late nights are very convenient for those who cannot. And the next one coming up for this year, the first one coming up for this year, is Thursday, February the 25th. Actually, I think that's our second one. February the 25th, which is a Thursday evening. And then the one following that is March 18th. We did have a flyer that went out on social media, and that will be posted as well on the clerk's page, on the passport page on our website by tomorrow. That will give you all of those dates for 2021 where you may obtain passport services after traditional business hours. And those hours are between 4:30 and 7:30 p.m. On the dates stated. And the next one is February the 25th, which is a Thursday. You do not have to pre-register for passport late nights, but we highly encourage you to do so. Those are very popular and tend to book up. If you pre-register, you will ensure yourself a spot. So if you get there late, even if there are other people in line, you'll still be able to reserve your slot and you won't lose your spot. So we encourage you to pre-register for that if you are interested in participating on any of those days. In terms of, especially if you have a larger family, that's very highly recommended that you do that. Also, we do have a special election that has been called, and that is to fill the vacant Senate seat that was formerly held by Peter Lucido, who was elected to the Macomb County Prosecuting Attorney's position. His Senate seat is now, the special election has been called with the primary for August and the general election in November. Further details regarding that election and obtaining a ballot for that election will be put on our website. So please check back on the clerk's website under the elections button. That's available on our homepage as well as on the township's main page as well. Thank you.
Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you. If there are any questions or comments on today's department report from the Treasurer's Office, please email me directly at kelliott, KELLIOTT @chesterfieldtwp.org, or feel free to call the office here at 586-949-0400. I want to also congratulate firefighter Andrew Sums for his achievements. I'd like to thank the Care House, Wigs for Kids, Turning Point, and Interfaith Caregivers for their comments and presentations. They were very informative and enlightening. I want to congratulate all of the Board of Review appointees, and I am also pleased to work to find a solution about the cell tower. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Ms. Dutcher and Ms. Jones, along with Mr. Reneau and Mr. Jacobson, for your willingness to serve. Trustee Anderson, March 1st, pursuant to legal counsel, is when we are targeted to be back in, able to have live meetings. That could change. However, that is the requirement at this point. So we'll have 2 more meetings, regularly scheduled board meetings in February under this platform. And we're always working on the technology updates, and I'm sorry if some can't hear. There is a lot going on up here. We're doing everything we can, and we urge you to be patient. I'd like to thank Treasurer Elliott for the report at the beginning. And I look forward to many more of those detailing just all the situations that we're in. We had a comment earlier on COVID vaccinations. I'd like to make it known that the vaccinations are being distributed by the federal government to the state, to the counties. We are in constant contact with the county on the problem, which we hear everywhere, which is the lack of the right amount of vaccinations for Macomb County. We have offered our locations or location for a potential disbursement site when the county gets the vaccinations that they are all geared up and ready to present. That piece of the puzzle is not a community block development grant function, which was one of the items there. However, we are very involved and concerned. The public comment from former Treasurer LaFontaine does not warrant any response whatsoever. Our next agenda item is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? And our next board meeting is February the 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by trustee Vosberg, support by trustee Joseph to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed by saying nay. We are adjourned at 9:37 p.m. Have a good evening.
Have a good night.
Aye.
Aye.